Things Fall Apart is a seminal novel by Chinua Achebe that explores the pre-colonial life in southeastern Nigeria and the arrival of European missionaries and colonial government. Here are the elements of the story and the prominent literary devices used. 1. Elements of the story. Characters. Protagonist Okonkwo is a proud, ambitious, and driven man who fears failure and weakness above all else, largely due to the shame of his lazy father, Unoka. He is a wrestling champion and a successful yam farmer. Antagonist. The primary antagonist is the colonial system and the European missionaries who introduce a new religion, government, and legal structure that systematically undermines the traditions and culture of Umuofia. Key supporting characters. Nwoye, Okonkwo's oldest son, who is sensitive and later rejects his father's rigid masculinity and the ways of Umuofia to convert to Christianity. Izinma, Okonkwo's favorite daughter, who is wise, strong-willed, and whom Okonkwo often wishes had been born a boy. Unoka, Okonkwo's father, who is poor, lazy, and musically inclined, the opposite of everything Okonkwo strives to be. Setting. Place. The fictional village of Umuofia, a collective of 9 interconnected Igbo villages in pre-colonial Nigeria. Time. The late 19th and early 20th centuries, marking the period just before and during the initial establishment of British colonial rule. Plot. The story follows a 3-part structure. 1. Part 1, The Rise, focuses on Okonkwo's life, success, and the social structure of Umuofia. The murder of the boy Ikemefuna and Okonkwo's accidental killing of a clansman, a feminine crime, lead to his exile. 2. Part 2, The Interlude. Okonkwo and his family spend 7 years in exile in his mother's village, Mbanta. During this time, the first European missionaries arrive, and Nwoye converts to Christianity. 3. Part 3, The Fall. Okonkwo returns to a radically changed Umuofia. The white man's church and government have gained power, eroding the clan's traditional authority. Okonkwo's desperate attempt to rally the clan ends in failure, culminating in his suicide. Conflict. External conflict, character versus society, or culture clash. The primary conflict is the devastating collision between the traditional Igbo culture of Umuofia and the aggressive, disruptive force of Western colonialism and Christianity. Internal conflict, character versus self. Okonkwo's lifelong struggle against his internal fear of weakness and effeminacy drives his actions, often leading him to make rash and ultimately self-destructive choices. Theme. The major themes include the clash of cultures, the destruction of a complex, functional society by a foreign, imposing force, tradition versus change, the rigidity of Igbo traditions, particularly Okonkwo's adherence to them, and the inability of the clan to effectively adapt to new pressures. Masculinity and status, the intense social pressure for Igbo men to achieve status, and the extreme definition of masculinity that leads to Okonkwo's downfall. Literary devices. Chinua Achebe's writing style is noted for its blending of European literary form with traditional Igbo oral storytelling techniques. Device, definition, and function in the novel. Example from the novel's context. Proverbs, short, popular sayings that express a common truth or belief. Achebe uses proverbs frequently to lend authority and authenticity to the language and thoughts of the Igbo people. Simile and metaphor, comparisons used to make the descriptions vivid and relate them to the Igbo world. He felt like a leopard watching an animal that had been caught in a trap, comparing Okonkwo's restrained anger to a leopard, foreshadowing, hints or clues about events that will happen later. The arrival of the locusts, a beautiful sight that heralds destruction, foreshadows the arrival of the white men who initially seem harmless but ultimately consume the clan. Irony, a contrast between what is expected and what actually occurs. Situational irony. Okonkwo spends his life avoiding the failure of his father, Unoka, only to commit a feminine act, accidental murder, and then a feminine suicide, hanging, which goes against all his masculine ideals. Allusion, references to specific elements of Igbo culture and mythology. Frequent references to Agbala, the oracle of the hills and caves, and the Egwugwu, masked spirits who represent the ancestral judges, serve as allusions to establish the religious and judicial frameworks of Umuofia. Tragic hero. the protagonist's ultimate ruin due to a personal flaw or mistake. Okonkwo is a tragic hero whose admirable qualities, diligence, ambition, are tragically bound up with his fatal flaw, or hamartia, his inflexible pride and fear of weakness.